Okie dokie. It's a little harder when you don't have I don't have all my multi-monitor setup. This is one single laptop trying to.
Mhm.
So that's my reasoning here, and I'm fluffing around here. All right. Well, we'll get this right eventually. Okay. So welcome to week 7. Um, March 9th. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's March, but I'll just ask, any questions about module 6, any issues that you want to review about that particular module? I think everyone did mostly better, and for what I can tell, most everyone got the extra credit points in the assignment. Let me review the quiz right quick. See if there's anything that sticks out. I don't remember seeing anything that stuck out from the quiz this week. I guess you're all getting used to my crazy quizzes. Um, that's a good thing, though. That means that you probably will do well on the midterm without any issue. But anyway, let me check. While I'm checking, if you have any questions, yeah, y'all did pretty well for the most part. Does anyone remember any particular questions about the quiz? I think you're all getting very used to queries and everything like that. I didn't see any issues with the assignment, and most everyone got the extra.
Mhm.
Evan, do you have a question?
Nope.
Nope. All right. All right. So let's move ahead. Yeah, this is kind of a shorter lecture, and maybe I did that on purpose, but we're going to go into module 7, and that's group functions. This is the first part, and then yes, I'll have to review everything after spring break because, well, I just ask you not to forget everything, but you probably will, and that's all right. We'll just surge ahead. All right, so we're going into group functions, part 1, and our objectives basically define and give examples of the there's more group functions than this, but these are the 7 that we're going to work primarily with. Well, technically, unless you go into statistical analysis, you're not going to see the standard deviation and variance. But the other group functions, sum, average, count, min, max, you will definitely see, and they're definitely useful. And then construct and execute queries using group functions. It's a different kind of an animal using group or aggregate functions. Um, and you'll get used to it. And there's some specific rules that'll drive you nuts, just to let you know offhand. So construct and execute group functions that operate only with numeric data types. That's kind of the first stanza of what we're going to go through as far as group functions. Let me check the attendance here again, see if anyone else has come in. All right. All right. All right. So here we go. So the purpose, what if you were writing an article for the school newspaper? Yes. And you wanted to know the average age of the student population. And basically you wanted to run essentially those queries. You could ask each student their age and then do your own calculation, divide by the number of students. And so that would be one way, and that's slow and usually pretty difficult. And so what if you had an immediate deadline? You might have a problem. But fortunately, we have items in SQL and in databases that you can truly use. Um, other purposes, it talks about date of birth. If you had date of birth, you can calculate ages without even asking them. Um,
Mhm.
you will learn about the power of group functions in this lesson. That should be learn, not earn. I'll have to correct that.
Mhm.
All right. So group functions. In SQL, the following group functions can operate on a whole table or a specific group of rows. each function returns one result. Remember that, just one result. Sometimes that can get a little confusing, but yes, when you look at that result table, you're only going to see one return. So in these group functions, as I said before, I gave you a little preview, average, count, min, max, sum, those are the main ones, and then standard deviation and variance. If you really want to get into the statistical analysis. All right, so let's take a look at a couple example queries. All right, so if we wanted to select a salary from employees, we would get this list of results. If we wanted to use a group function max, um, and I'm getting ahead of myself, uh, and notice the syntax of this, the group function select max, and then the column salary from employees, and it will return one result. And that is telling us that the maximum salary in that database is 24,000, excuse me. And that's a monthly salary. And if we wanted to actually calculate the min, and my big head's in the way. So it select min, and it will return the minimum salary. So once again, just make a note of the syntax and make a note that you receive one result from that group function. This is the first thing that you really need to wrap your head around when you're starting to put some of these complex queries together. Believe me, it can be a little confusing to start, but no worries. We'll try and straighten that out. So there's also a sum. So that was max and min. There's a sum function. And yes, you guessed it. It basically adds all the values of the salaries together. So in our employees company back when this database was built, they were only paying them $175,500 a month for Oracle. Think about that. And some of them make that. Well, anyway. And then there's an average. Yes, you're waiting for this. And the syntax is just select average from employees, and that's the average salary, 88,775. So you see, this can be quite useful as far as grouping these values together and providing a result. Now, count has its usages. Generally, when you use the count function, it'll count the number of not null, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how null impacts group functions of those values in that database. We know we have 20 employees in our little database, so hence we can verify that count by using the count function. All right, so it returns the number of records or rows. And then just to review the other two variants, basically this can only be used in numeric data, but I'm not going to go into the definition of variance. You can look that up, but it's a value that has something to do with the mean and, a departure from the mean. But anyway, so yes, it's treated as another group function. And then I guess I am going to talk about it a little bit. For example, if the average grade for the class on a test is 82% and the scores range from 40 to 100, the variance scores would be greater than the range of 7. So basically, if you're interested in creating those types of calculations, there you go. And then standard deviation, similar to the variance, primarily used for statistical analysis. I was not into a lot of data analysis as far as calculation. When I went into research, yes, but I wasn't using a relational database system, so hence. But standard deviation is for two sets of data with approximately the same mean. And yes, here's your statistical lesson for very quickly. The greater the spread, the greater the standard deviation from the mean. So there you go. You can use that in to surprise someone about your knowledge of those particular numeric calculable functions. But in SQL, yes, if you had the opportunity and someone wanted you to calculate these particular functions, you can. So, all right, enough of that. All right, so here's where we get a little tricky when it comes to the group functions. The where clause You know that's used to filter results. However, you cannot use the where clause the way you're thinking in a group function, or use it with a group function, I should say. So if you look at this query, select last name, first name from employees where salary is equal to the min salary, although that's kind of a, well, you're looking for who's making the least amount of money. That kind of would make sense. We can probably eyeball that and do a better job with this query, but SQL will not allow you to place a group function in this manner in the where clause. And it's one of those rules you would think, well, that kind of makes sense, but it's one of those rules as far as relational database systems. All right. Um, so we're going to get back to that, but let's go through a few more examples before we get back to. I think we don't really even cover filtering it with group functions, if I remember correctly. I just wanted to share that with you. Do not use a group or aggregate function within the where clause. So here's another example. Select the minimum life expectancy. So this is the lowest life expectancy for the countries. And basically the lowest is 32. That's pretty low. Um, and so you can use the whole idea here is that you can use min with any data types, um, and it will return a value. So I'm going to provide examples of those. That's what I'm. So here's one with numeric, and then here's an example with basically um, string. So we're selecting the min country name or the one that's first in the alpha order. So that's going to be Anquilla. And then you can actually use min with the date data type, and it's going to select the earliest date or minimum date. So think of it that way. If you need to, reference um, information that's based on this particular function, that's how it will return a value. The key here, you can use it in any data type, any of the basic data types in our little relational database system. Okay. And then max is the same way, any data types. Remember max is the highest value, or so here is a maximum life expectancy. And I'm getting pretty close to that. So yeah, but hopefully well, I'm not, well, anyway, I digress. The max country name is the latest in the alpha order, Western Sahara. And then the max date is the latest date, or basically, oops, um, the latest date within the database itself. So min is earliest, um, earlier in the alpha, A through Z, and then earliest date listed in that particular column.
Mhm.
Any questions about that? That makes sense? Hopefully I'm not confusing you all too much. All right, now sum. So sum is basically associated with numeric values. So, and that would kind of make sense, right? So you generally want to use this with a numeric column in each in the area of our countries, and salary are numeric. So basically it's adding up all the areas. In this first example of this country where the region ID is not 29. And then as we saw before, we're summing all the salaries of this department. Sum is pretty straightforward, just addition. Um, Now, we did talk about nested functions, and you will have a few exercises where you're asked to round, primarily round things like average, so you don't get a large number of digits on the right side of the decimal. So average, once again, numeric only. And this is just a nested example using round and average as far as salary. Now, I did say before, not to confuse you, because you're probably thinking, wait, I thought he said we could not use the where clause with the group function. Well, I don't think I said that. If I did say that, you can smack me on the head. You can't use a where clause to create the filtering. So if we add the where clause on the right side of the equal, that's not allowed. But obviously, or if we add the, excuse me, group function on the right side of the where clause, that's not allowed. So basically, yes, you can still filter on certain criteria, but you can't filter around group functions. And there's another way to do that, and we'll get to that. All right. So these are all very basic group functions. Oops. Average, numeric only, and yes, it computes the average. You probably figured that out. Now here's a section that is pretty important that you understand because this can be, you probably already guessed, can be an issue. When you have null values or when you have null is not really a value. When we have null in your column and you're running a group function, all group functions ignore nulls. So things like average will not quite be what you think it is because an average is a total number divided by some sum. So you do have to be very careful. So that commission percentage, and that may not be as accurate as you think. Although there are some, well, some of the systems are smarter now, so they're kind of ignoring nulls in one way, but usually just think of nulls as something that's going to be a problem for you when it comes to especially numeric values. Just be very cognizant of that. Um, all right, so we're going to handle or talk more about nulls as we get more involved in the group functions, but I'm going to keep throwing a lot at you because that's my job is to throw so much at you that you're like, I don't really remember what he said. So it will give me the opportunity to review some of that. So yes, you can use more than one group functions in your select statement on the same or different columns. So we have max salary, min salary, all in one. And you see that each of the group functions will return one result, one for max salary, one for min salary, one for min employee ID of our table, and we're only using this one department. And we are going to get into, well, just the group functions and in grouping. So I'm not going to jump ahead of myself, but just remember each of these group functions will return, this will return the max, yeah, all of the particular criteria. So please remember that. Okay, with all that being said, let's talk about some rules. And these are the general rules to start with group functions. And you probably won't find any specific reasoning for them. Um, I can remember thinking these rules make no sense, but if they're rules, you have to follow them. And if you try and break them, then you usually get an error. So group functions do ignore null, and that should just say null. They will ignore nulls. Uh, and it cannot be used in the where clause. Now, the where clause can be used with a group function scenario, but you can't use them within. You saw those examples. There was no group functions within the where clause, so it cannot be used within the where clause. Min max count can be used with any data type. Sum ab, variance, and standard deviation can only be used with numeric. All right, that kind of makes sense. You normally don't do calculations on strings or even dates, usually at this level anyway. All right, so those are the basic rules of group functions that you have to follow. There are other rules, and we'll get to those once we get into the second. Uh-oh. Can you all still hear me? My system is glitchy. Yeah, it's hotel wireless. So if I glitch out, just let me know. Just raise your hand, and I'll try and continue. All right. Section one, pretty straightforward. You got the 7 group functions, 5 of which you'll see more often than not. Average, count, max, min, and then, well, sum is in there too. Standard deviation and variance are usually the ones that you won't see as much. Remember, um, average, sum, standard deviation, variance are numeric only. Excuse me. Max, min, and well, count is an interesting one, but Count is just a count, so, but those can be used in any data type. All right. And now our second section, as usual, I'm going to expand on count and I'm going to talk about a specific type of function called distinct, and then going to reintroduce you to the NVL. Um, I, I'm teaching so many database classes. NVL is another way you handle nulls. So if for some reason, have I introduced you all to the NVL function yet in this class? Does anyone remember this particular function? It's a function to handle nulls. Yes, no?
No.
No,
No.
okay. Okay, thank you for responding. So, and it's the reason why I'm introducing this to you now, you will have to account for that, basically looking at nulls and how they change some of your group functions. All right. So as far as our objectives, construct and execute a query using the count, use distinct and NVL functions with group, and that's, wow. Yeah, I think I streamlined that lesson. All right, aggregating or grouping together. You'll hear that term a lot, aggregation or aggregating functions. And that just means this is the whole kind of the background and foundation of group. So grouping data using SQL functions enables businesses to calculate cumbersome problems. Ooh. And that is true. I've used quite a bit. I've used group functions quite a bit to streamline, problems that could have taken many, iterations. So remember the example to count all students in school. That was way back. So that's kind of a challenge. There's just not enough hands to accomplish. Well, hands or fingers, whichever you want to call it. And I don't think we count on our hands and fingers and toes anymore. We did have calculators and things like that. Anyway, so fortunately, SQL, the group function in SQL can accomplish many of these tasks without any big issue. So the first one, count, and the syntax for count. The first part is just count and in a column, and it will count the number of columns. But remember, if there's a null anywhere in that column, it will ignore it. You may not have the correct number of rows or records. So, and I'm expressing that this will return the number of non-null nulls in a column, and that's kind of an issue. So if we do our employees table, we know we have 20 employees, simple. All right, so essentially what you want to do if you're dealing with nulls, we know that we have nulls in that commission percentage column. If we ran a query, basic query on the commission percentage column, we'd get this, basically where we will have 16 records with null and 4 with values. If you did a count on that, it would only return 4. And basically yeah, if we ran that, and you're probably curious, you're probably saying, is that right? Well, let's take a look. Let's run just to be sure to show you how the count works. I'm going to bring up the SQL developer. Just, all right. Wait for it to launch. All right. So select, count, mission, percentage from employees. And you see, Only four, right? We know we have more employees than four. So remember, there's proof that, yeah, the count ignores all the null values, and group functions will do that. And that could be a problem if you want to do any type of calculation. So let me restart that. All right. So count ignores nulls. Remember that. Please remember that. All right. So if we want to count all rows in a table, there's actually a simple way to do that. You use the count star or count star within the parentheses. It's called a wildcard count. It basically will count the number of records. Um, it's an easy way to always, check the accuracy of your count. You just use that as one of your columns in your select statement. So select count star. So if we take a look at our little and then just change this to star, just like that. And if we run the query, now we get 20. So there you go. That is the way to bypass any nulls that you may be concerned about. All right, so yeah, count if we wanted to find how many employees were hired before um, that particular date, we can use count star and then add a where clause, and it will count the number of employees that satisfy that condition. Another good way to use that count star, the wildcard count. And you see that that's an easy way um, to essentially handle, just counting the records in your table. All right, distinct. Distinct is a specific function used to eliminate duplicates. So it's a keyword function, and basically it'll return the result that will show non-duplicates. For example, if we did select job ID from employees, you see we have a lot of duplicates. If we want to find out how many distinct types of jobs we have, we would add the distinct keyword, right after your select statement, select distinct job ID, and we see we have 12 different distinct types of jobs in our little company. Okay, that's the distinct keyword. Distinct is, well, there's a lot you can do with it. I think I do go over some of the rules. Um, all right. Boy, these slides are all kind of wacky. Anyway, so distinct, when selecting more than one column, the query will return non-duplicates of the combination of the columns. And that's the key. So if you see that query there, just select distinct job ID, department ID, it's looking at the combination of the columns. And if you look at my little illustration here, there's 13 distinct combinations of job ID, department ID, which means we have probably duplicates just about every department. And even null is considered here, even though it ignores, well, distinct is not necessarily a group function. It will consider the null as a part of that distinct association. So that's, why do I include that in this whole group functions? Well, it's another function that you can use very clearly. The one thing I do want you to notice with the distinct function, and this is just telling you or showing you that as far as the two columns, and this can be a little bit confusing. If you're using distinct, yes, you can use multiple columns, but remember, it's looking at creating a distinct, connection between the columns. So be very careful what you're trying to accomplish using distinct. I would suggest stick with a single column unless you're having issues with that association. All right, so using distinct. So it can be used with all group functions, and that's why I'm introducing it to you now. This is kind of a pain. So here's a simple query: select salary from employees where department ID is 90. Select sum salary where department ID is 90. Select sum distinct salary where from employees where department ID is 90. So this is basically saying, because we have two, so let me walk you through this. We have two individuals in this department that have the same salary. If we're looking to see who, what is the sum? Well, it really depends upon the scenario, but what is the sum of the distinct salaries? Then if we just ran a sum, the total sum is 5,800. If we ran a sum of just the two salaries, then it's obviously 41,000 or 58,000, excuse me. Now, would you need something like that? Possibly. Once again, it's really based on the necessity of the report. So basically, it's just used to return non-duplicate values. All right. It can be useful, and that lengthy explanation just distinguish between a single 17,000 and a one. All right. Distinct and count. So when using distinct with a group function such as count, the result still set will return the number of non-duplicate values. So once again, because we ran basically the number of jobs in our company, we knew there were 12. So if we run a count distinct job IDs, this is another way of returning that number. So we know we have 12 different jobs in our company. And notice count distinct. So and now we want to know, what do we want to know here? How many different jobs are assigned to employees, and then how many different salaries? Oh, this is the salary. How many different salary amounts are paid to employees? So we have 18 different salaries. We have 12 different jobs. So there's a few people making a little bit different. So just notice where the distinct shows and why it's returning one value, because we're using a group function count. Make sense? I know that's a lot, but and you will run across scenarios I have in the past where basically you need to make sure that data is correct. And with their little database, yeah, you see it's pretty representative, but if you had, hundreds of thousands of records, yeah, that would be a little bit different. All right. So that's distinct. And now I'm going to introduce you to the MVL function. So sometimes it is desirable to include nulls in your group function. And I'm going to show you how. So for example, knowing the average number of customer orders served each day could be used to judge how much food to order. Some days the restaurant is closed and no customers are served, but the owner has found that computing the average by including the days closed, and this is a business calculation that actually makes sense. It's better. It is a better indicator than just counting the days with customers. So with that being said, that example, even though this is a little bit different of an example, this is that commission percentage. So what we're doing here, at first, remember we ran this average of commission percentage. It ignores all nulls. And it does give you a true average if you do your calculation of those four sales individuals that have commission percentage. It would be that 0.2125. But let's say we want to replace all the nulls in that commission percentage column with zeros, and this is where the NVL function comes in. The syntax here, NVL, and then you have the column name, and then the replacement value, which has to be of the same data type of the data type in the column. So we know this is numeric. We're going to replace all the nulls in that column with zeros. So, and if you want to check this, you can run, or we can run. Let's see what happens when we run. Just to select this. Let's go to our little developer to show you. We're going to run select NVL submission percentage, comma, 0. Notice the syntax from employees. All right. We run that, and you notice that all of those columns that have null are now replaced by 0. And so that can be useful in the form of predictions, etc. But that's why we would do something like that, especially when we want to use it for other group function calculations. So please just remember that's essentially the purpose of the NVL. All right, and I wanted to show you that more than, with our commission percentage, it's the only column that's substantially full of nulls. But once you start running the group functions, once we get into part 2 of the group functions, and hopefully you'll go through the practices, you'll see how useful this particular null handling function is, and that's NVL. Null val. I won't give you the representation of the acronym. Just remember it's NVL. And I just showed you its usage. It's just a column, a valid column, and then your replacement value. And remember, nulls are not defined. Yeah, just undefined. No, so you can eliminate that, that association to a non-value in your column, which is the whole idea. All right. So some terms to remember. Aggregate, which means group together or bringing together. Count, and then an expression. Count distinct, and then an expression, and then distinct, and then an NVL. All right. So I told you this was going to be a quick lecture. Okay, so in this slide, a couple things, and I'm just going to stop sharing before I go into what you're required for the week. It's a very easy week, so I'm actually giving you a free week and then an easy week. So that's like 2 weeks. So everyone should be happy, right? Two easy weeks. So, but don't get complacent or lazy. And I'm gonna show you why. I'm gonna bring up Canvas and show you what our schedule is. Leading to the midterm. All right. So let's reshare. Get away from our. All right. Okay, so midterm. You're probably thinking, why am I scaring you with that term? Well, we do have a midterm coming up. It is required. I got too many things open. Go away. Yeah, where's Canvas? Oh, here it is. All right. So if we get into Canvas and take a look. All right. Oh. All right. I can do it. There we go. All right. Down to module 7. Very easy week. Those 2 sections that I just covered. And then we have spring break. Within that section, let me just start with what I would normally show you. There's some videos as usual, good resources. Some of them are entertaining, some of them are pretty dry. Just prepare yourself. then some practice queries that I kind of recreated. Not a whole lot since it's a light week. Yes, this is a light week on purpose. I'm sucking you all in to be comfortable. Like, oh, this class is easy. Yes, and we only have two sections that you need to cover. Please do. These will be on the midterm. All these group, this level of group functions, plus what we have to handle after the break. Whoops. All right. Just making sure you're all still there. Okay. So two sections to cover. And then an assignment, pretty straightforward, not anything here for heavy lifting, group functions, 6 little exercises, 3 on group functions, 3 on count distinct in NVL, all associated with your SQL developer little database schema. So nothing, no big surprise there. And then our quiz. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you, yes, next week we're not meeting. It's your week to refresh, take your Monday night and do something fun, hopefully. After we get back, Monday the 23rd. Wait, today is the 9th. Yes. The 23rd, we're going to go the second half of group function, and that's pretty heavy as far as because I'll have to review module 7 and then go into module 8, and then we have our midterm. And I'll start the conversation now. Basically, I'll have what I call a midterm lecture, or my goal is to review a few of the things that I know students struggle with, and then ask you all for specific questions. I do have a review document that I've modified where essentially it has everything, and as long as you can print this out, you won't be able to access this once you start the midterm, and there's a specific reason for that. Let me just briefly start the conversation there. The reason for that, during the midterm, you're using what we call a testing responders lockdown browser. Basically, when you launch this browser, it freezes out. Basically, it freezes every other application. If you try to launch any other application, including SQL Developer, and I know that's a bad thing because mostly if you can use SQL Developer with some of those scenarios, you would not have any problems. But yes, we are using the lockdown browser, so prepare yourself for that. I would suggest taking copious notes, and if you're a note taker, even you can probably find a lot of this on your phone, but you won't be able to use SQL Developer. All right. There is a testing responders lockdown browser assignment during that week where basically there's 3 questions that you have to answer. And yes, it doesn't really matter. Well, I do want you to get the questions right, but don't worry if you miss one, you'll get the 3 points. I'm not really concerned about that. So basically when you go into that, and I'll review this again after spring break, it gives you the link to download. There's a little video on Respondus and why we're using it, and there's a link to download the browser, and it runs on any system. It's a Chromium base, which means that it'll run on a Mac or PC or Windows. And yes, there's a little quiz. Once you download it, you launch the little quiz and answer the 3 questions. So that is required. That is required before you get into, if you do not, I will tell you this now, if you do not launch the Respondus Lockdown Browser test, then I can't allow you to take the midterm. And so that's due at the end of the month. And then the midterm, I will launch that, or it will open, excuse me, on Wednesday, April 1st. That's not an April Fool. and it will close April 5th. The key here, you have 90 minutes. Let's see, I don't remember how many questions I left in there. I think if there's 50 questions, and you're saying that's a lot of questions. Well, let me see. Let's see if I remember. Yes, there's 50 questions. I'm not going to review it now because you'll probably forget. Uh, 90 minutes, which means about a minute and a half, a little more for each question. Don't panic. Many of the questions you can answer right away. There's some multiple choice, there's some scenario questions. Most of the questions should not take you a long time to complete. I'm not just saying that to scare you. So anyway, just to review again, and I'll remind you, the midterm is essentially the week of March 30th, the last week of March. Um, so I lecture that Monday. Hopefully you get the Respondus Lockdown browser tested and out of the way. And you can do this anytime if you're not too afraid. Now I would definitely do it before, but I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to go in there and make sure they can download and launch the little quiz. And then once again, the actual midterm opens April 1st. Once you open the quiz to take it, you have to go through the whole test. It is not set up so that you can stop it and restart it. Once you stop the quiz, that's it. That's your score. So, and that's the way that our institution wants to run that. So set aside an hour and a half. It generally won't take you that long. And launch the quiz when you're ready. Yeah, you can anytime during that Wednesday and Sunday at midnight. I would definitely not wait until Sunday at 9 or 10 because you're putting too much pressure on yourself. Don't do that. It's just not necessary to do that. Uh, so launch the quiz, take as much of the 90 minutes as you need to, and answer all of the 50 questions. All right. And I guess just to let you know, and I'll stop sharing so I can see if anyone has a perplexed look on their face. Don't worry, don't even worry about it yet. Just take a deep breath and say, "Phew, let me get through these couple weeks." I would suggest review the midterm document, go back and look at some of the assignments that you struggled with. You can always send me questions about those. Um, it's not, I will say it's not as hard as you probably will make it because you hear the word test, and then your brain just goes into this, "Oh, I'm not a good test taker" mode, and it's not that hard. So stop doing that to yourself already. Um, I tried I tried to make it so that basically, and you've all paid attention. If you paid attention throughout the course itself, this portion of it. All right, in my quirkiness, I probably throw in a couple of questions that are, I mean, you look at the answers, you say there's no right answers. Well, that's testing your critical thinking. That's my philosophy. So most of it is clear cut. There may be a couple, and I do get some discussion points for some students. They're like, "Hey, you must be on some type of crazy drug or something when you created this question." I actually did review both the midterm and the final because I didn't actually like them either. I'm a pretty good test taker and I didn't like the way they were structured, but no panic is allowed. And that's why I give you this nice little calming phase where you're just relaxing, thinking through how much you have learned. That's the whole idea. And then just taking the midterm, getting through it. All right. Any questions or comments about that? So
We can use,
go ahead.
we can use like printed notes and stuff. We just won't be able to access other things on our computer.
That is correct. You can print out, you can have the whole Oracle library printed out if you need it, which you really don't. That takes too. Remember, the more printed material you have, the more time you're going to take flipping through it, which you don't really have that much time to do that. I would study, but don't cram. I mean, believe me, cramming does not help. Your brain doesn't work that way. Well, most people, some people can really perform that way, but most people, your brain doesn't work that way. But you can use whatever you need, but limit it. Just reference a few things, a few of the functions and things that you are struggling with. That's what I would write down, make notes of. Everything else, and believe me, and it's not that I'm a know-it-all, but you could probably whiz through about 30 of the questions, taking you a few seconds. That's what I would suggest. That would be my strategy. Answer the questions you can answer right away. You can go back to the questions that you haven't answered, as long as you haven't submitted them, or submitted the quiz. So, and yes, it'll seem daunting, and that's on purpose. I mean, you're thinking, man, I can get through 20 of the questions, and I'm like, I just can't do it. Well, and then by the time you get to 40, you're like, I can't make it. And you look up the clock and you still have 45 minutes left. So anyway, that's my positive thinking for you to deal with the midterm. But that's coming. Don't worry about it. We're going to address it. And basically that lecture for the week will be all about the midterm. So just focus on finishing these two modules, 7 and 8. The midterm, well, the spring break is in between, which means totally relax, but don't do a brain dump. And then come back ready to pick it up. I will do a review. I even will do a little bit of a review on some of, if any of you have any questions about some of the material, I can review that the week after spring break as well. Okay? Make sense? Are we all good with that? You're all doing well. I don't know that anyone's in this group is struggling with any material. Have you all learned a lot, or uh, so I will tell you again, because this has been reiterated with all my little speaking engagements, data, manipulation of data, data analytics. We need to have more individuals understand SQL to start. So it is still prevalent in all of our industries now. So if you think you're learning something that's obsolete, stop thinking that way, because it is not. All right. So as promised, pretty short lecture this evening. Not even an hour, but thank you all for showing. Let me make sure I get Jose on the attendance so he doesn't get. And then if there's not any questions or comments, I'm giving you back most of your evening for a Monday. Does that make you all happy, or I can drudge along for a little bit more, but I don't want to. All right.
It's bedtime.
All right. Yeah. Thank you all. I will not see you next week. Remember, we're not meeting again until the 23rd. Okay? All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.